All right. And let's give them what they definitely came for. Everybody wants these.
Unmuted. Mwahaha.
All right. Did not plan on going what the hell is that? Oh, there we go. Messages popping up. Did not plan on going live. I was just going to do a straight internal recording, but I figure I'll bust this segment out. Folks love when we bust it out. All right, so coming off of CNN weather, when it comes to predicting how much sea levels will rise as global temperatures warm, the fate of Antarctica looms all important. All right. Now, this is considered to be a hulking mass at the bottom of the Earth, and it's home to the world's largest land ice reservoir. Now, if Antarctica's entire ice sheet were to melt, it could raise sea levels by nearly 190 whole ass feathermucking feet. All right. And that would be more than 9 times as much as Greenland could potentially contribute. All right. So let's say Greenland melts and that raises the sea level, multiply it 9 times. All right. So the world's other glaciers and ice sheets contain more than enough water to cause major problems for coastal cities. But scientists, those fuckers, say that the Antarctic ice sheet is what stands between coastlines that resemble what we see today, and if it collapses, a world map unrecognizable from the one we've known. And still, the question of how much of Antarctica will melt if humans keep heating up the planet and how fast is a major source of uncertainty. Now, when it comes to predicting sea level rise and the threat facing the roughly 6 million people currently living in coastal areas across the globe. Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if it's going to happen like in my lifetime, like the exponential pace of these things happening. Like I'm a person that is a Midwest resident now, and I did live on the coast, and yeah, that's an interesting idea. Like, are coastal folks going to come moving in this way? But then we live in capitalism. Are they going to see job markets that are lucrative for them, like moving further in, or are they just going to get slightly off the coast? I would guess more so just slightly off the coast. You know, like just more folks would be in inland Washington. I don't know if a lot of folks would go to the other side of the mountain range, like as far as the West Coast goes. I can't imagine a lot of people wanting to venture to the eastern side of the Cascades because you tend to fuck around with some desert land out there. You know, especially up in the Northwest where you got ones like Mount Tahoma, you might know it as Mount Rainier, where the clouds are bumping right the fuck into that mountain and all the tall hills around it, and then all the vegetation is on the western side. Like you kind of want to live where the vegetation and the rain is. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Let me take a glancy poo over there at the old Facebooks live. All right, nothing's happening there. I also wonder if I'm supposed to have the video playing to see something happening. Okay. Now, ice cliffs are shown on January 1st, 2020, in the King George Island, Antarctica. The fate of Antarctica's ice sheets is key to determining how much sea levels will rise in the future. Two new studies published in the same scientific journal Wednesday agree on a lot: that ice melt globally from human-caused warming is a threat to coastlines around the world, and that planning needs to begin now for a future where sea levels are higher than they are today. But they come to different conclusions about how Antarctica's ice sheet might fare in a warming world. One finds that there is no clear signal that Antarctica's melting would necessarily increase or decrease under different global warming scenarios. And the other shows that Antarctica's melt could accelerate drastically if the planet warms by 3 degrees Celsius. as it is currently on track to do later this century based on the current greenhouse gas emissions trajectory. All right, but that's based on the current greenhouse gas emissions trajectory. Because one thing that we've noticed here as we keep covering, particularly sea level rise and climate change, is that the projections have to worsen because the capitalism isn't stopping. And isn't that Paris climate agreement? Let me look at what was that, like 2013? Like that is like damn near 8 years ago now, right? Let me see. Paris climate agreement, first year. All right, let's look at first year. Now this one, no, that's bullshit. This one says 2016, and no. I know where I lived when I first heard that. It says December 2015, Paris climate is no better than nothing. Okay, damn, that's somebody making the neoliberal argument for that ass. Damn, and then there's another article looks interesting. Has the Paris climate agreement had any impact? Damn, and that's from January 31st. And I mean, just asking that question alone should be a problem. Like, you should do some shit where results are guaranteed. Like, to ask if there's been any impact at all. Like, goddamn, can I get moderate results from the people of moderation? Incremental results from the people of incrementalism? A little bit of something? Yeah. Let's see. Let me put Obama signs. I want to see when the first year was. Obama signs Paris Climate Agreement. What the hell? Well, I misspelled the shit out of Obama. Keep your fucking fingers on home row, kids. And no, but it seems that there's a lot of shit published on this very recently. And I guess it's because Obama re-signed or Biden re-signed. All right, but I know that shit's from like 2013 or something. It's old as fuck. And no, it hasn't done shit because we had reporting from then that actual scientists were saying that they're going for that 2.5, and that's not enough. Back to the original article on CNN, 1.5 degree warming threshold is key to limiting sea level rise. Right? Yeah, and Paris was going for 2. So one of 2 studies published in the scientific journal Nature is and remember, these are studies published in scientific journals. All right? Not your fucking libertarian uncle's feelings. It's a complex and comprehensive modeling assessment that projects future melting across all the world's major land ice regions, from Antarctica to Greenland to the glaciers of the Himalayas, Alaska, and elsewhere. The study involved 84 researchers based in 15 countries and examined how much each of these sources could contribute to sea level rise under a host of different global warming scenarios. Sea levels are expected to continue to rise this century, the scientists say, but how much depends on the scale and pace of human actions to limit global warming. The researchers found that limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius could cut expected sea level rise contributions from land ice globally to just over 5 inches by 2100. That's roughly half what the report says we could expect to see if the world stays on its current emissions trajectory. I think overall, like, obviously these numbers look super bad, but I think like the human species would continue. And it's like, how much of it would continue? Right? How many human beings would survive this? Because that's just sea level rise and like and all that displacement alone. But there's still air pollution. There's still the planet warming, hotter summers, right? There's still more of that fucking that flash cold, right? That in Florida they call it snap cold. But that colloquialism hits because people aren't considering that those are jet streams from polar vortexes that are wider and more wobbly now, And like, is it gonna get to a point where like how it's wobbling and those parts are reaching down farther? Like if you're looking at the video, I have my fingers down as if my fingers are the polar vortex wobbling. And like in 20 years, 10 years, 50 years, could it get to a point where ends of the vortex break off and then just become separate rogue storms? Am I being alarmist? Maybe. Maybe we need more alarms. The researchers found that limiting the warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius could be expected to cut sea level rise contributions from land to ice globally just over 5 inches, roughly half of what the report says. The potential reduction in melting is unlikely to be spread evenly across major land ice sources, the authors found. Greenland's ice losses, for example, would plummet by 70% if humans managed to hold warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, while glacial ice losses elsewhere would fall less significantly by roughly 50%. So again, so now even these projections alone are saying that outside of Greenland, even if you try to fix shit, you're gonna get 50% of the fucked up result of what has already been done to the planet. The researchers reached a different conclusion on Antarctica. The study says that Antarctica's ice sheet shows little variation in the amount it will contribute to sea level rise, even under scenarios where global temperatures climb above 1.5 degrees Celsius. The study found that disintegration at the edges of the ice sheet and melting on its surface will likely continue, but that some simulations show that those losses could be offset by gains in the snow accumulation on the continent. And we have a quote here by Sophie Nowicki, a scientist professor at the University of Buffalo and one of the lead authors of the land ice modeling study. Sophie says, quote, "In Antarctica, it is very complex because a warmer world could mean more snowfall throughout the entire year, but it could also mean more melt at the side of the ice sheet where the ice shelf that's floating over the sea can break up. You have those two competing effects of possible growth from snowfall and melt that's resulting in the ice sheet thinning." End quote. And imagine how that would hit with right wing media, right? What do you mean global warming? There's more snow. And they would just absolutely love that. And they would eat it up and they would have their memes. And then we would share them to our tag groups. Get in losers. We're going laugh reacting. And we would go and laugh react and nothing would be done. And that's why we would laugh react, because that's all we've got left. Taking one more little glancy poo, dancing toward the end of this article. Since 1980, global sea levels have risen by an average of around 8 to 9 inches. Melting land ice is responsible for about half of the sea level rise the world has experienced since 1993. The other half is owed to thermal expansion in the world's oceans, a process where water increases in volume as it heats up, and the world's oceans have gotten a lot hotter due to human emissions of greenhouse gases. A study published last year found that the oceans are absorbing 5 Hiroshima-sized bombs worth of heat energy every second. A study published last year found that the oceans are absorbing 5 Hiroshima-sized bombs worth of heat energy every second. Despite the uncertainty over what will happen to Antarctica and differences in the study's findings, DeCanto, one of the authors, says that the key takeaway remains the same. Coastal communities need to prepare for a future where sea levels are likely higher than they are today. Quote, I think a common message between our studies that we need to have is that we need to have flexible adaptation measures in place to deal with a wide range of possible sea level outcomes. Yeah, we need them. You ain't gonna get them. All right, folks, let me go ahead and kill the Facebook Live so that I have myself some sort of vidya to go uploadifying here. Please be as safe as possible wherever you are.